Testing. 1, 2, 3. What's up, y'all? I'm down to chat. I'm down with some trivia and facts. So welcome back to Backlook Cinema, the podcast. I'm your host, Zoe. That's spelled Z-O if you're in the U.S. or Z-O if you're outside of the U.S. It's the 106th episode. Thank you for downloading or streaming. We really appreciate it. We watch movies that I loved when I was growing up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I watched these movies with my son, Zach. And if you like what you're about to hear, then please tell your family, tell your friends, tell all of your neighbors, tell your Target secret shopper about our humble little show, Backlook Cinema, the podcast. Now, me and Zach usually watch movies together. We didn't watch this particular movie together. It was a movie that I wanted to rewatch, and it's outside of a normal format as it came out in 2005. But I really wanted to watch this movie again with all the buzz of the upcoming sequel. But before I talk about that, let me talk about a movie that me and Zach did watch together, and that movie was Cocaine Bear. And the short analysis is that Zach truly loved that movie. I thought it was pretty good. It got a little bit slow in some parts, but for the most part, it was funny, and I had a great time. The characters in that movie were fantastic, and it was like over the top in some places. The over the top comedy that I really appreciated, and there were some gross scenes. There was some which you would expect from a movie called Cocaine Bear. So if you get a chance, go check it out. It's a nice little movie. I think you'll have a good time. So the movie that we're going to talk about today, with this episode is about, we're going to check that out in the opening credits. So welcome to the opening credits, and the movie that we're going to talk about today is Constantine. So about Constantine, Los Angeles police officer Angela Dodson has a dream that her twin sister committed suicide. In the following hours, she finds that her dream was, in fact, real. Angela is convinced that her sister would never kill herself, and as she seeks evidence to prove her theories, she gets some unexpected help from a stranger she bumped into. He's a stranger who's skilled at dealing with the occult. He's a stranger who discovers that Angela and her sister are connected to a terrifying supernatural event. The stranger's name is John Constantine. Released February 18, 2005, produced by Warner Brothers, Village Roadshow Pictures, and DC Comics, it grossed over $75 million in the US and Canada and $230 million worldwide on a $100 million budget, and it had mixed reviews. So I think this movie is a cult classic now. Although it was poorly received in the United States, it was much more popular overseas. It more than doubled its money back for the overseas audiences, but it didn't do as well on the home turf. And I can't really explain why it did so poorly. I think it should have did better than that, but it was very much it had very interesting visuals. It was and it had a good story, had great visuals. It had pretty good dialogue. So yeah, it was a movie that I really liked to watch, but I can understand the problems that some people had with it. So let's dive into who helped to make this movie. This movie was starring Keanu Reeves as John Constantine. And we know about a lot of the movies that Keanu Reeves is in, and the wonderful impact that he has had on cinema. He has been in some of the most iconic movies to ever be made. So I want to talk about some of the movies that are in pre-production or post-production. So there's one movie in pre-production called John Wick Chapter 5. We kind of knew that was coming. And right now, this in production is Constantine 2. There's been a little bit of back and forth of whether Constantine 2 was going to go forward or whether it had been canceled. But from the sources that I was able to gather, it seems that it's still a go, that it's still in production. It's still, they're still intending to release this movie. And it's listed in IMDb as being in production. A movie that's in post-production, a movie that he just completed, is John Wick Chapter 4. So he's deeply into the sequels of some of his most popular franchises. It's amazing that Keanu Reeves can appear in some of the most iconic movies that have ever been made, like life-changing movies. He's made some incredibly smart choices throughout his career. Everything from Point Break to Speed to The Matrix. It's just incredible how he's able to choose these fantastic movies. So up next is Rachel Weisz. She plays Angela Dodson and Isabel Dodson, and she's been in The Constant Gardener, The Mummy, and The Fountain. Up next is Djimon Hounsou. He plays Papa Midnight. He's been in Blood Diamond, Amistad, and Gladiator. Shia LaBeouf plays Chaz Kramer. He's been in Transformers, Fury, and The Peanut Butter Falcon. Max Baker plays Beeman. He's been in Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, Hail, Caesar, and many TV shows. Pruitt Taylor Vince plays Father Hennessy. He's been in Identity, JFK, and Mississippi Burning. Gavin Rosendale plays Balthazar. He's been in Little Black Rock and The Game of Their Lives. He hasn't been in a whole lot of movies. He is primarily a musician, and he's done soundtracks for several movies. Tilda Swinton played Gabriel. She's been in Snowpiercer, the movie from 2013, Michael Clayton, and recently, 3,000 Years of Longing. Peter Stormare plays Satan, which is appropriate. He is often playing somebody incredibly creepy. He's also played a creepy person in Fargo. You can see him in The Brothers Grimm and Armageddon. So this movie was directed by Francis Lawrence. He's also directed the Hunger Game movies, I Am Legend, and Red Sparrow. Written by Jamie Delano, Garth Ennis, and Kevin Broadbent. So Delano and Ennis, they're responsible for the Hellblazer. That's the comic upon which this movie is based. And we're going to talk more about them in the trivia, or at least their situation is being credited as written by. And but the story for this movie was written by Broadbent, and he's also written The Siege of Jadotville. I think that's how you say that. And a movie called Mindhunters from 2004, and The Glimmer Man. So not a whole lot of prestigious movies that I can find on his profile. The music is by Carl Bedelt and Brian Tyler. So Bedelt has written music for Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, and The Time Machine in 2002. Tyler has written for Scream, Charlie's Angels, Rambo, Last Blood, and TMNT. And for those who are uninitiated, that is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That is the Michael Bay twist on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles lore. So that's it for the opening credits. And if you're enjoying the show, remember that you can get t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, face masks, jerseys, and more at our website, backlickcinema.com/shops. And up next, we're going to talk about our favorite parts. back, and we're going to talk about our favorite parts of the movie, Constantine. So, one of the things I really liked about this movie was Keanu Reeves' performance. He has this quiet confidence about his character, and he has a little bit of an attitude, but it's like he's abrasive, and you don't usually see that from the characters that he plays. So it was nice to see that. People talk about his acting, but I think that his acting is more subtle. So the subtle changes that you see in his performances is, I think, what really makes the characters that he plays stick out. John Constantine, as he plays John Constantine, really fits the character quite well. I know that he's way different in the comics, but there is an explanation for that, and we can talk about that later. But I really like the way Reeves plays it. So there's the first exorcism that I really like. So there's the first exorcism scene in the movie, and this is where there's a demon inside of a little girl. A priest has called Constantine because the priest is unable to exorcise the demon, and you can tell when the priest greets Reeves or Constantine as Constantine comes into the apartment, or the apartment building. You could tell there's a little bit of conflict between Constantine and, I guess, the church in general, because the priest is like, what? He has the attitude like, don't be mad at me. See, I did call you. I tried to exorcise it myself and I couldn't exorcise a demon. So that's why I called you. And and Constantine is kind of standoffish about the whole situation, or at least about the priest calling him to complete the exorcism. So it's a little girl. She's doing the typical possessed person thing. She's crawling on the wall. She's screaming in a guttural voice and whatnot. So Reeves is able to wrestle her down. It looks like at first he tries to perform a basic exorcism, and it doesn't really work. So they have to tie her to a bed, and then he requests a mirror. So he gets a mirror to have hoisted over her image, over the bed. The mirrors are over the bed facing them. So and Reeves is basically straddling her, trying to exorcise the demon. You can see the demon inside her body, like it is like pushing up against her skin. It's a very, very interesting visual. Like it's trying to burst out of her body. And then Reeves performs some more rituals and chants, and he moves out the way, and the demon basically ends up inside the mirror. Like it's both inside her and inside the mirror. Like you can clearly see the demon in the mirror. And then they get the mirror. It's a huge mirror. Now, how somebody would have such a huge mirror in their house, or that Reeves or Constantine would know that somebody had such a mirror. There's no real explanation for that, because he says, I need a mirror that's at least 3 feet high, right? And somebody had one in the apartment building. So they rush out and they get the mirror. They hoist the mirror up over the girl and Reeves that's over the bed. And they have to hold these up by ropes. And he tells everyone, whatever you do, don't look, right? So they're supposed to hold this mirror over the bed, but they're not supposed to look at what Constantine is doing. But of course, one of them looks, and all of a sudden, his hair turns white, and he starts scratching, and he ends up letting go of the mirror and ends up in the corner. So now Constantine has to hold up the mirror and perform the exorcism. So all this is going on, and as I said, the demon ends up in the mirror, and then they have to hoist the mirror out of the room while the demon is, because now the demon is trying to break out of the mirror. They have to hoist the mirror out of the room and out of the building. So they're trying to basically pull the mirror out of the building through the window, but the mirror is too big. It's a little bit too wide. And so they're going to basically break the frame of the window to get the mirror through the window. So Constantine is pulling on the ropes to get it outside of the building as hard as he can. Now, all the while, I'm thinking they could just tilt the mirror because it's only wider by like a half an inch. So they could have just tilted the mirror and pushed it out. But for whatever reason, they didn't. They didn't tilt it. It's not like they couldn't touch the mirror because Constantine himself was touching the mirror. So I don't understand why they just couldn't tilt the mirror a little bit and just kind of throw it out the window. But they didn't. Or maybe because it was super heavy. I guess I don't know. I don't want to relitigate their actions. But Reeves was able to pull the mirror hard enough on the ropes to break the frame of the window and get the mirror out of the apartment. The apartment is several stories high, so the mirror falls to all the way several stories to land on the hood on the top of this cab that's parked there, and the mirror bursts into fragments, and the demon is presumably either vanquished or sent back to hell. I'm not exactly sure, but it's out of the little girl, and it's no longer able to harm anybody else. That's the impression that we get. The first exorcism scene basically sets the tone for the movie. Had great visual effects they still hold up. The visual effects in this movie still hold up, and I liked the way the magic works or is performed in this movie. So in the current movies, the magic is more like fantastical. It's like it's very obvious that the magic is going around. You get a lot of light and a lot of razzmatazz when in today's movies when magic is depicted. But in this movie, they chose to be real subtle about it. So in this movie, he's like Constantine himself. He's basically the only one that's really doing magic. He's doing a bunch of really mundane things, it would seem, to begin his magic rituals. And then something fantastic happens, but usually it's something where the environment moves or the environment changes, but nothing so flashy as, say, the way they use magic in the Marvel movies. Like nothing like Doctor Strange and his magic lights that appear when he's moving his hands, or Wanda when she waves her hands, you got a bunch of red magic all around. Nothing so flashy and fantastic as that. Just very subtle suggestions of magic, and then the mundane things that Constantine himself does in order to evoke these magical things. So they've got a bunch of demons and angels. I'm truly trying to talk, ladies and gentlemen. They've got a bunch of demons and angels that basically are disguised as humans. You can only tell them apart really from the way their eyes kind of flash or shine. So, and every once in a while, you'll see the angel's wings or some flesh peel away from the demon, and you can see the demon flesh underneath the angel flesh, but it's not so like fantastical because of the rules that are set forth that the angels and the demons have to abide by. I also forgot that Rachel Dawes and Shia LaBeouf were in the movie. It's like quite a surprise when I saw them. It's like, oh, she's in the first part of the movie, and it's like, oh yeah, and then you see Shia LaBeouf is basically he's kind of a cab driver that chauffeurs Constantine around. He's a chauffeur for Constantine because he wants to be Constantine's apprentice. He wants to be able to do the things that Constantine does. He wants the same job as Constantine. So he has put himself under Constantine's wings. So Shia LaBeouf is playing a character named Chaz Kramer, and Kramer is basically a younger guy just trying to get into the supernatural game. So another part I like was the meeting with Gabriel, and Gabriel is an angel that's basically Constantine is trying to bargain with Gabriel to try to get into heaven. So Constantine is sick. He has lung cancer because he smokes all the time. And he doesn't want to die young. And he's been told that he's going to go to hell because when he was younger, he had these visions, and because of these visions, nobody believed that he could see the supernatural world, and they tried to commit him. And these attempts to commit him and these people not believing him led him to try to take his own life. And he was dead for 2 minutes, and he went to hell. But then he was brought back by the paramedics, or the miracles of modern medicine. And so he glimpsed the other side. So he's been told that because he committed suicide, he can never get into heaven. And he's been trying to, through his acts of exorcism and fighting demons and sending the violators of the rules away from earth, he's been doing these acts to try to get into heaven. And Gabriel is basically telling him it doesn't work that way. You can't get into the heaven. You can just continue to do what you're doing, but you're never going to get into heaven. So, but the way Gabriel is depicted by Tilda Swanson is pretty cool. So, like when he first sees Gabriel, he can see her wings come out, and then they go back, and then she's basically assuming a fully human shape. So for most of the time, you don't see like the wings of the angel. They only pop out at certain points when I guess the director wants you to know that those were demons or those were angels. But I like that was one of the subtle things that they did in the movie that I really liked. I guess overall, I really liked the style of the movie. The style of the movie was very impressive to me, and I'm still pleased by it to this day. Constantine can't buy his way into heaven, so he has to go along his merry way. So one of the things that I really liked about this movie were basically all of the combat scenes, all of the fights that we see in this movie. So one of these fights was where he fights this bug man. So normally when the demons try to attack him, they attack him through human beings. It's when they assume a human shape and they attack him. But he had to fight this bug demon. So he was a bug demon out in the open. So he was basically a demon that was consisted of a bunch of bugs. It was a bunch of bugs that had formed a human shape, like with arms and legs and a kind of a face, but it was all bugs, like beetles and gnats and spiders or whatever, just composed of bugs. And so he's slamming his bug fist into Constantine. He's dragging and punching Constantine around with bug fists and bug hands. And Constantine has an array of weapons. He's kind of like a supernatural Batman. So one of the things that he has, it's a matchbox with screaming beetles inside. So when he shakes the matchbox, the beetles scream and it scares away the bugs. The guy that gave it to him is called B-Man, and B-Man told him that it's like nails on a chalkboard to demons. So as he's fighting this demon, he's able to get the demon in the position where they're in the street and the demon gets hit by a bus. And so, but they're just bugs. So he killed majority of the bugs and it kind of dispersed the demons. And then after the bus goes by, he starts to step on the remaining bugs. Like, not because he needs to, more like because he's insulted that the bugs would attack him in the first place. Another thing that I like is that he goes into this supernatural club. So you get into the club when you approach the guard holds up a card and you're supposed to guess what the card is depicting. So it's like one of those psychological tests, like in Ghostbusters, like a doctor holds up a card and you're supposed to tell the doctor what the card is. And the card is using this to determine whether or not you're psychic. So if you're a supernatural person, when the guard holds up the card, you should be able to say what's on the other side of the card because you're a psychic. And if you're psychic, then you can get into the club. So when the guard holds up the card, Constantine immediately tells the guard what the card is or what it's depicting, and he gets into the club. And Chaz, wanting to be like Constantine, because Constantine told him, because Chaz wants to get into the club, and Constantine told him, well, if you can get in, you can get in. And so the guard holds up the card for Chaz. Chaz tries to guess. He guesses wrong because he's not a psychic. He has no powers. And the guard won't let him in. So that's it. That was a cool way of gatekeeping. That's the best way of gatekeeping in a supernatural club that I've pretty much ever seen. So Constantine's in the club. There's a bunch of angels and demons, and he goes to the back where he meets Papa Midnight. And Papa Midnight is played by Jaimin Hanso. So this was a cool performance by him. I really like their meeting together. And the whole point of Constantine visiting Papa Midnight is to use this mystical chair. Papa Midnight is supposed to be neutral. Like, he doesn't help the angels or the demons. He doesn't help heaven or hell. That's why both the angels and demons are in his club. It's kind of a refuge or neutral territory where supernatural beings can go and not fight because fighting isn't allowed. And apparently he has enough power to stop various supernatural entities from fighting in his territory. There are various ways that Constantine is trying to help Angela Dodson solve the so-called suicide of Angela's sister. So to find out, he says, well, the only way to find out if your sister committed suicide is to go to hell. So Constantine does his ritual so that he can go to hell and find out if Isabel, which is Angela's sister, if Isabel is down in hell. So like I said, they do some mundane things in order to activate his magic. So what he does is that he gets her to get a giant pot, like a roasting pot, like a roasting pot that you would roast a turkey in, and fill that with water. And he sets it on the ground, and he sits in a chair, and he puts his feet in the water, and that's how he starts his magic. And I just like the weird mundaneness of it. I've said that word a bunch, haven't I? Anyway, so he sits in a chair, he does his chant, and next thing you know, he's in hell. Oh, he has to look at the cat. So he said he needed something of Isabel, and Isabel has a cat. So he grabs a cat and he looks into the cat's eye, and he gets into hell. So in this movie, hell is depicted as like a wasted land. It's like it's all red and everything is falling apart. And there are demons in the distance. It's not, kind of what you would picture hell is like. And, among the crumbling buildings and infrastructure, he finds Isabel. So apparently Isabel really did commit suicide. One thing about the way this particular magic ritual worked is that he has to tell Angela to get out of the apartment. So she gets out, she starts to leave the apartment. And as soon as she closes the door, that's when Constantine goes to hell. And then she kind of opens the door and she opens it right back up again. And he's already back. So for him, it was several minutes that had passed. But for her, it was barely a second. Because she like closed the door. And I guess she hears something from the room. So she opens the door right away. And she sees Constantine, but now he's smoking. Like, I think the water has boiled out. He himself is smoking because he had presumably just got back from hell. Coming near the end of the movie, what I really like is the fight that he had with Gabriel. I keep calling her Gabrielle, but her name is Gabriel. So the fight that he had with the angel Gabriel at the end of the movie. So he knows, as I said, there's a supernatural thing going on. So there's the gist of the story is that there's a demon who is, or the son of Satan. So there's the son of Satan who wants to basically take over hell, I guess. So, but he wants to come to earth or take over the earth or something of that nature. He wants to be set free. And so he's using the spear of destiny that's not clearly explained. The spear of destiny is seen throughout the movie, but and it seems to have a place in the movie. It's like it's seeking out a particular person, and in particular seeking out Angela, the police detective. But it's being I guess the spear of destiny is being guided by demons to find Angela, to help the son of Satan to be born into the world and I guess unleash hell on earth. I think that's the gist of the whole storyline. So eventually Angela is captured by a demon, and when she's captured, she is basically made to be a vessel by which the son of Satan could be born from. So first she's possessed, and Constantine has to fight the possession. And in the midst of this fight, he realizes that there's like a greater actor involved. There's like somebody's concealed, and he has to force that person or that entity to come forth so he can confront who is behind the shenanigans of it all. So he performs this ritual, which involves a tattoo on his forearms. And in this ritual, he commands the entity to come forth. Like whoever is hidden needs to come forth. And who should come forth but Gabriel? Gabriel is apparently the entity that is behind all the shenanigans, who has started putting everything in motion. And Gabriel is basically jealous of humanity, and she's jealous because humans can do wrong and just ask for forgiveness, and nobody else in the universe can do this. And she's mad that they're so imperfect, but yet they get to experience heaven. And she reasons that the best of humanity comes out of strife and difficulty. So she conspires with the agents of hell to unleash the son of Satan on earth so he can turn earth into like a hellscape or hell on earth and give everybody difficulty and strife. And the people who survive this difficulty, she would deem worthy of getting into heaven. She's like, these people have survived hell on earth, so these are the people who are actually worthy of getting into heaven. Like, she really wants to put mankind through the ringer, and not with permission of God or anybody. This is just through her own initiative. So so Constantine is fighting with Gabriel. Like, it's a physical fight. He's really no match for the angel. And eventually, she basically beats him. So Constantine has one last trick up his sleeves. He cuts his wrist to commit suicide yet again. And then as he lays there dying, he's in a different room than Gabriel now. Gabriel is basically making sure that the son of Satan can be born, and Constantine is in another room dying. So he cut his wrists, his blood is draining, and then Satan comes forth because Satan wants to collect Constantine's soul for himself. Like, he's the only soul that Satan would personally come to collect. He's not going to send a random demon to collect John Constantine. Satan wants him for himself. Now, it's not really explained why Satan has this particular proclivities, but that is the deal. So when Satan shows up, Constantine starts to negotiate with Satan. He's saying that, your son is in the other room about to be born. And Satan's like, so? And it's like, well, he's with Gabriel. And he's like, so? But I forgot what it was, but he says something to Satan that causes him to stir. I think that it was that, that Gabriel would take his place or something like that. And it basically was something that Satan didn't like. So Satan goes in another room. There's a marvelous effect happens with Satan going from Constantine to Gabriel. And he gets to Gabriel and challenges Gabriel on what she is doing. And Gabriel says that, she would smite Satan herself. So she goes to hit Satan, and then she's pulled away and tormented by a heavenly force. And I think it was Constantine that said, it looks like somebody doesn't like your plans of what you're doing. And her wings are burnt away, and she's forced into a pool. So basically Constantine kind of saves the day. And so Satan goes to Constantine and asks him, what does he want? Does he want an extension of his life? What does Constantine want? And Constantine asks that Satan releases Isabel from hell to allow her to go to heaven. So Satan agrees to this. And now, after agreeing to this, he decides to drag Constantine to hell. And he's so giddy about it. So he grabs him by the arm and he starts dragging him to, the other room so he could drag Constantine to hell. And then it gets harder and harder for him to pull Constantine. And the floor buckles under. Well, it doesn't buckle, but it starts to bulge because he's pulling Constantine. It's like Constantine weighs 1 trillion pounds and he's bulging the earth. And it gets to the point where Satan can't drag Constantine and he's prevented. And next thing you know, Constantine is being pulled upward into the sky. And what has happened is that because Constantine had sacrificed himself and that he asked Isabel to be released from hell rather than ask for a life extension from Satan, because of that sacrifice, he is granted entry into heaven because he wasn't doing something for himself. He was doing something for somebody else. He was committing a selfless act, which is the thing that he needed to do to get into heaven. And as Satan was being infuriated that his prize was being taken from him by the heavenly hosts, Constantine kind of looks back and lifts the middle finger to Satan. So that was a glorious part. So Satan decides that he's not going to let Constantine go that easily. So he forces his hands into Constantine's body and pulls out the cancer and heals all of John's wounds. So now John Constantine is healed and he's alive, so he doesn't go to heaven. By way of sacrifice, John gets what he really wanted, a life extension. Either way, he had a favorable outcome. Either he was going to go to heaven or he was going to have an extension of his life. So he got the life extension because Satan could not stand the fact that he might get into heaven. That's basically the movie. So Isabel's is in heaven. So Angela got what she wanted and Constantine got what he wanted. So everybody's pretty swell except for Chaz. Chaz Kramer had gotten killed in the fight with Gabrielle, and that was kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It was kind of an abrupt ending because after he died, they don't go back and revisit him. They don't ruminate on his death or anything. He's just kind of dead, and then that's kind of the last we see of him. Everyone else seemed to be able to go on with their lives. Constantine is chewing gum now instead of smoking a cigarette. So he's trying to do the best he can with his extension. And now we might get a Constantine 2. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what that would be like. So that's it, talking about our favorite parts. Let's see now what we have for the trivia. And we're back. We have the trivia from Constantine. So here we go. The character of John Constantine was originally created by Alan Moore during his run on DC Comics' Swamp Thing. However, following his negative experience with From Hell in 2001 and The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in 2003, Moore decided to reject all money and credit from Hollywood on any adaptations of his work. Thus, he gave all the money he would have gotten to the artist who drew the character with him and rejected his own created by credit from the film. So, Jamie Delano and Garth Ennis, they did write on the Hellblazer comic, but they didn't create the character of John Constantine. And that's because Alan Moore was like, I'm done with this. I'm done with this crap. I don't want to deal with it anymore. And has since not even looked at anything, any media that was ever based on his work. So up next, The Look of Hell was based on old footage of nuclear tests, specifically the sudden shockwave immediately after the blast that disintegrated anything in its path, hence the crumbling landscape. It was a good depiction. It was impressive. The Spear of Destiny prop is the same one as used in Hellboy from 2004. According to the director's commentary on the DVD, Constantine's brass knuckles were made from gold that was blessed by a bishop during the Crusades. The holy hand grenades were actually Christmas ornaments filled with water. The lighter Constantine uses during the movie was created as a real lighter by Zippo Lighter Company, depicting Saint Benedict around the case. Keanu Reeves brought the holy shotgun prop and gave it to director Francis Lawrence as a gift. That's a pretty good gesture. According to the director's commentary on the DVD, the rag that Constantine lights on fire to defeat the flying demons is a piece of Moses' shroud given to him by B-Man. B-Man's explanation of the cloth when he presented it to Constantine was cut from the film. Yeah, so there is a demon fight where he lights a cloth on fire and then he waves it around, and the blazing cloth the light from the blazing cloth is so fierce that it destroys an entire horde of demons that have broken into the earthly realm. And yeah, they didn't explain the cloth, and without the explanation, it just looks like he took an ordinary cloth and performed magic on it, and not that the cloth itself was magical. Or you might think the cloth was magical, but not know the significance of why it was magical. B-Man explained some of the props that he gives to Constantine, but he most of the stuff he uses that, he just uses the stuff and you don't get the significance of it. But it's not that important for you to know what these items do. Interestingly, I feel like Constantine is kind of like a supernatural Batman, and where Batman uses a lot of tech gadgets, Constantine uses a lot of supernatural gadgets. And so it's not just him performing rituals. He has a bunch of gadgets on his body, on his person, that he uses to fight demons and angels sometimes. According to director's commentary, Constantine's line in which he says he doesn't want Angela to be another ghost following him around is reference to the comics, where he is haunted by the ghosts of friends who have died because of him. The original title, Hellblazer, was changed because it was too similar to Hellboy. The films were scheduled to be released within a short space of time between them, and it was decided that having such similar titles would hurt the sales of tickets. Therefore, Hellblazer was changed to Constantine. It was pretty smart. It was a pretty smart thing to do. It was forward thinking. I don't think people would have gotten confused. I think it was forward thinking. According to an interview with the AV Club published on 28th August of 2017, Peter Stormare came up with his own costume design for the appearance of Lucifer. The off-white linen suit with tar dripping down from his feet are specifically mentioned. The producer and director had initially wanted leather trousers, bare-chested, a dog collar with spikes, and tattoos over Stormire's face and chest. I feel like that was Stormire's version of Satan was very. It was like a kind of unexpected because it seemed to have the veneer of respectabilism. That's not a word. It had a veneer of respect about him, but it was a very well kept suit, but there was tar at his feet, at his bare feet, I think. And so it's like somebody almost pretending to be a respectable character, but really isn't. I really like that depiction. And it's not like he didn't have tattoos. There were some, but from the suit he wore, you can see that most of it was covered up. But it's just his performance that came out that really showed exactly how creepy he was. He's just very good at playing creepy characters. Up next. The Nazi flag used to wrap the Spear of Destiny was destroyed after shooting to prevent it from falling into the hands of neo-Nazis. I guess they were like, well, we don't need this lying around. They used a lot of Nazi flags when they made the Indiana Jones series, so I wonder if they did tremulous treatment of the Nazi paraphernalia, or did they just put it in a room somewhere? The tattoo on Constantine's arms is an alchemical symbol of the Red King, which is worn by him for protection. It is the fire triangle with 3 radiating arrows below represents the perfect Red King, or sulfur of the philosophers. Aside from John Constantine, the only characters to survive the transition from comic to film are Ellie, a demoness mostly cut from the original theatrical release, Papa Midnight, Chas Kramer, and Gabriel. All the other characters were invented for the film. In the comic book Hellblazer, on which the film is based, the character of John Constantine is from Liverpool, England, and is drawn to look like the singer Sting. In the film, the character is from Los Angeles, California, USA. It is widely believed that the change was made specifically for Keanu Reeves. The truth is, the original script retained his nationality, but got no response from producers. So the writers changed him to an American, and the script quickly gained attention. So this is a product of nativism, in which the writers couldn't get anybody to pay attention to their script because the main character was not American. So, but now we know, nowadays, now we have confirmation that we can have a Constantine that is from Liverpool, England. And I think if they do any further shows about Constantine, maybe it'll be from, the Liverpool, England character that he was originally meant to be, but not Constantine 2. Constantine 2 is going to be Keanu Reeves, and probably in some kind of Elseworld DC Universe project. We'll see. We'll see what shakes up. Because of a better understanding of the role of mental illness and depression, the Roman Catholic Church dropped the ban on burials for those who committed suicide in the 1980s. There would be no objection to burying Angela's sister. It is not considered an unforgivable sin, nor does it mean the person has necessarily lost their eternal salvation. Yeah, this was a huge plot point in the movie, which came out in 2005. So, but the film kind of has its own mythology about it. But yeah, that was a huge thing, because there's a scene where Angela goes to a church and she's begging her priest, who is also a friend of hers, to give Angela, or her sister Isabel, her last rites. But the priest refuses, saying that, she committed suicide, so, we can't do anything. We can't perform the burial. We can't do any rituals to help her get into heaven. And that's why she wanted to prove that her sister did not commit suicide. So up next, at the beginning of the scene where Constantine exorcises the demon from the young girl, there's a close-up of Constantine placing his cigarette on the side of a table. However, the director did not have a lens that could focus that tightly, so they created a fake cigarette the size of a cigar and shot it from a greater distance, creating the illusion of a normal cigarette. Oh, that's awesome. I like the problem solving they were able to do in this movie. And finally, in the lower right-hand corner of Isabel's toe tag, there is a number 616. While some people interpret the mark of the beast to be 666, others interpret it to be 616, hence its appearance on the toe tag. In the book of Revelation, the number of the beast is, quote, 666, end quote, or 666. Another thing that should be noted is that a lot of people, when they see 666, they say, okay, that's the mark of the beast. I have to avoid this, or this is a bad omen, or something or some such. But if you read Revelations, it's actually the numbers that add up to 616. So you're not looking for, 666. So you're not looking for the number 666. You're looking for the numbers that add up to 666. So you're looking for an equation, not the number 666 itself. Go read it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. I'm just sitting here in a room that needs to be cleaned badly and probably talking out of my butthole. But yeah, just don't take, like LeVar Burton says, you don't have to take my word for it. Anyway, that's it for talking about the trivia. And up next, we're going to talk about what the critics thought. All right, we're back. We're going to talk about what the critics thought. And it received a 46% on Rotten Tomatoes, 72% from the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. And IMDb review, I was doing good. I was doing so good. And then I started talking and it came out wrong. I'm still messing up. IMDb reviews gave it a 7 out of 10. Got it. Hey, third time's the charm. Drew Dietz from Giant Freaking Robot wrote, Constantine deserves a cult following and should be remembered for all the things it did right instead of its perceived wrongs. And, I kind of agree with that. I like that. I like that understanding. Brian Lowry from Variety wrote, blazes a few new trails and bogs down in a confusing narrative muddle. I will admit that it can be a little muddling. Like there's the whole Sphere of Destiny thing. It kind of muddles things for the movie. I don't think they needed that, or they should have better explained it. It could have been, the script could have been tightened up a little bit. Steve Bryodrowski from eSplatter wrote, this film combines elements of comic book fantasy with horror to create an enjoyable brew, sort of a film noir version of The Exorcist crossbred with the stylization of The Matrix. Yeah, I kind of get that feeling too. Finally, Kurt Loder from MTV. You remember Kurt Loder from MTV, don't you? He wrote, a little too muddled and erratically paced to command much interest. While some of the effects are cleverly worked up, the picture seems more often to be on CGI autopilot. I kind of disagree with it being CGI autopilot. To me, or at least from today's standards, the CGI is a little bit subtle. It's because there's not much of it. Like compared to today's standards, there's not a whole lot of CGI that's like obvious, or it's so obvious, like you're thinking to yourself, well, that's obviously CGI. Like it's not so much CGI that it threatens to take you out of the narrative. So I don't think that it's on a CGI autopilot. But some of the other stuff he said, I can see how people would feel that way. So finally, Constantine is, as of this recording, available on HBO Max. That's it for today. Next week, we have a very special guest. She's the host of the great film podcast, Verbal Diorama, and her name is M. The movie that we chat about will be Airplane. I said it like that because, there's an explanation point after the title. So you got to be excited when you talk about that movie. Follow us on Twitter or TikTok at Backlook Cinema, or on Facebook or Instagram at Backlook Cinema Podcast. And if you're on Mastodon, at Backlook Cinema at mstdn.party. Don't forget that you can contact us with any questions, comments, or suggestions at fanmail@backlookcinema.com. One last time, if you like this show, then please help us grow by spreading the word about Backlook Cinema, the podcast. Believe me, it matters. Be safe, share a movie from yesteryear with your family, hug your loved ones, and if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.